Hello, Theodore Shoebat here, giving you guys another message that you will not hear at church. I guarantee that 160 Christians have been kidnapped by Muslim terrorists in Syria. 160 Christians, according to the report from Alatea, which is a Christian website. I believe it's like a Catholic website that reports on the news, especially things that go on within the Christian world. It says here that up to 160 Christians are believed to have been kidnapped from a town in Syria and are being held in an unknown location. The kidnapping was part of a larger operation when the Islamic State captured the town of Al-Qaryatayn near Homs on Thursday. In total, some 230 persons were abducted. We do not know what Islamic State intends to do with the hostages. Father Jihad Yusuf, a member of a Syrian Catholic religious order, told the Catholic pastoral charity Aid to the Church in Need on Sunday. Does ISIS intend to negotiate and let the people go free? Or does it intend to kill them? We don't know. Normally they give Christians three options. Either they pay the jizya, the capitation tax, or they convert to Islam. Or they must leave the place, and of course they give them a certain duration of time to leave the place, or else they have to either follow the first two, either convert or be killed. The latter option was evidently not offered, or the Christians would have left. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and Syria-based activist Beboris al-Talawi said they have no information where militants took their captives after overrunning the heavily populated town, Catholic News Service reported. And according to the same report, it says a commentator for the UK-based observatory said that those abducted were wanted by ISIS for collaborating with the regime, the Bashar al-Assad regime, and their names were on a list already prepared by the militants as they occupied their town. This has serious implications for those people, and their lives could be in danger. And this is most likely why they did not give these people the option of leaving or paying the tax. They just kidnapped them. Because these Christians were doing some sort of work with the Syrian government. And when you do work with the Syrian government, you are considered to be an associate with the kafir, with the enemies of Allah, and therefore you deserve death. In the Islamic world, it's one thing to be born Christian. To be born Christian, to observe your faith without criticizing Islam, without evangelizing to Muslims. You just go to church, you pray, you keep your religion to yourself and within your own Christian circles. You don't extend your religious faith to any Muslim people. You may have a friendly debate with some Muslims, but that's only in a moderately secular, somewhat Islamic society. You would never debate with a Muslim in a full caliphate Sharia-based society. You just wouldn't. But as long as you keep your faith within yourself, you will be taxed the jizya. Yes, there will be murders, but you would not be worthy of death just for being a Christian in that state, as long as you keep it to yourself. Now, again, this is not the case all the time. This has been the case numerous times throughout Islamic history, but under numerous times, under numerous instances, there have been cases where Muslims have done mass slaughters on Christians just for being Christian, even if they didn't preach against Islam, even if they didn't evangelize, they were killed. Greatest example of that is the Ottoman Empire and the Seljukian Empire. Both were Turkish, and they butchered millions of Christians just for being Christian, even if they didn't, even if they didn't evangelize their faith to others. So, with that said, these Christians are not deemed as just the Christians who kept their religion to themselves. These are Christians who worked with the regime, therefore they are crusader conspirators. And I have heard other reports. There was one Israeli report done by an Israeli think tank they're saying that it looks like there's not even going to be a proposal to accept a ransom for their release. They're just going to be executed, or they could be harmed in some other way. But from what we know so far, and from some of the astute and prudent opinions that I have heard, especially from this Israeli think tank, it looks like that these people are going to end up being executed. I hope to God that I am wrong. I hope to God that I am wrong. And here we are in America complaining about racism, about Michael Brown. And now they're saying, oh, we're going into the anniversary of Michael Brown's death. Some gangster, some killer gets killed by an officer who's a criminal, breaking the law. And we're acting as though we are living under this horrific regime. Poor black kids can't even buy a bag of Skittles. They can't even buy a bottle of Arizona iced tea. They're going to be killed. And they're making it. I mean, you have these lunatic black thinkers like Michael Eric Dyson go up there, protect your children. Protect your children. You can't even be a black man in America anymore. You can't even go into the store and buy a bag of Skittles and a can of Arizona iced tea without the police opening fire on your children. Protect your children. The white police officers are gonna kill them. And just a few minutes ago, I just saw another video. A young black man was murdered in a car dealership by an officer. Did he use force? Should have he used so much force? Was it wrong to use so much force? And you're seeing this black kid, and he's on top of a car. He's not even a kid. He's a grown man in a car dealership, jumping out of a car and slamming his foot into the vehicle. And we're like, well, yes, of course he should have been killed. Look at the destruction he was causing. Look how much of a deviant person he was. People like that should not be in society. People like that, they should not be in society. Well, it was a non-violent crime, so I could just take a sledgehammer and slam your walls and graffiti your walls and go in there and spray paint your kitchen and throw my cat crap, get my cat's litter box and just dump all the crap into your sink. It was a non-violent crime. This is the insanity they were coming up with. This is the insane ideas that people are coming up with to justify violence and to further deteriorate the very society that we're living in. And yet we're talking about these 160 Christians. Look at the suffering they're going through. I don't see any schmucks coming up and saying, Christian lives matter. I don't see the same schmucks who are talking about Black Lives Matter with their crocodile tears, going into these events and saying, I just gotta go and fight against you people. I just have to go through the crowd and find a bunch of people just to say that Black Lives Matter. Just to say that Black Lives Matter. And these little tears coming down. You have these theatrics coming in and acting as though they're living under Hitler's regime, when in reality, all that's happening is you have black kids, black young men committing crimes, which is extremely common. I mean, it's a sad reality, but it's very common. You have a bunch of black kids who are fatherless homes, who have no fathers in the house. They have no moral guidance. They got no moral compass. And they're going out and they're shooting people and they're committing crimes. And what do you expect the police to do? And we're acting like this is something new. It's nothing new. This has been going on for decades. In the United States, it's going on for decades. I'm sorry. And here we have 160 Christians being kidnapped. We don't even know where they are. We don't even know their whereabouts. I don't see any of these schmucks coming out saying Black Lives Matter, or sorry, Christian Lives Matter. We had the area of Malula, the village of Malula, that was inundated and invaded before Michael Brown was sitting there committing crimes. Before Trayvon Martin was going out attacking a Mexican guy named Zimmerman in the neighborhood. The town of Malula, the Christian town of Malula, was invaded by Muslims, and there was a woman, and the Muslims called her, a Christian woman. The Muslims gave her a phone call, and they said, we just got your husband. Don't worry, we slit his throat, and Jesus Christ never saved him. I don't see anybody saying Christian lives matter. We have Christian businesses in the United States being harassed because they refused to acquiesce to the homosexual agenda. Their businesses are being closed down. They're being forced out of business because the state says if you don't accommodate the homosexual agenda, you're going to be fined. I don't see any of these schmucks saying Christian lives matter. Well, that's no big deal. Blah, blah. Really, what's the big deal about a black criminal being killed? He's a criminal. He broke the law. So what if he's black? He broke the law. He broke. These Christian people didn't break any laws. They were just simply observing their faith. But I don't see any of these schmucks coming out saying Christian lives matter. It's just the insanity that we're living in. And then if I come out and I say these things, or if someone comes out and says it with the tone that I'm saying it in, or even worse than me, or even less than me, with less enthusiasm that I'm exuding to you right now, they say, "Oh, we don't like your tone." Well, I really like what Donald Trump had to say, and that is, "Who gives a damn about tone?" You have Christians being killed. You have Christians with Muslims putting knives on their necks, telling them to leave their faith. It's absolutely evil. Yet we have to observe one thing. Look at the power of these people's faiths. Look at the power of their faiths. Look at the power of their zeal. How much they rely on God. I was reading the scripture today, and there's a beautiful, beautiful verse. I was reading the Psalms, and I just would like to share with you guys a psalm that I read. I'm trying to remember. It's one of the early Psalms. I believe it was Psalm chapter 11, verse 1. Look at this beautiful verse. It says, "In the Lord put I my trust." Look at the beautiful words. The spiritual, the mystical effect that it has on your mind when you read it. "In the Lord put I my trust. How say ye to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain?" It's such a beautiful verse. Psalm 11, verse 1. "In the Lord put I my trust. How say ye to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain?" And this is a verse that I believe exemplifies the faith of the Eastern Christians. The Eastern Christians who don't say no to Jesus, who don't renounce their faith. Even with the knife put on their neck, they don't renounce their faith, because their soul has fled to the mountain of God, the heavenly Mount Zion, the heavenly Mount Zion of which St. Paul says in Hebrews, where the spirits of just men made perfect reside, where angels live, where the armies of the Lord live. That is where their souls take refuge. That is where their souls flee to. Their souls ascend up to the mountain of God. And so they go into the most Islamic areas. The Christians in Egypt will go into the most jihadist, inundated neighborhoods with crucifixes in their hands, crying out how much they love Jesus, crying out how much they love the faith. And they're not afraid. They look death right in the eyes and they say, "You are not death. I don't see death." They say with St. Paul, "For me to live is Christ, to die is gain," as Paul says in Philippians 1. Why? Because their souls are one with God. When your soul is one with God, why would you ever fear dying? You wouldn't. That right there is the explanation as to how these Christians can go through such persecution and yet still remain Christian. Yet here people in the West, their grandmother dies of natural causes, and they go, "Where was God in all this? Where was the Lord? If God is real, why would he let my grandmother die?" Well, people die. Natural death is something that is natural. But martyrdom is something that is profound. And when these people die as martyrs, their family doesn't sit there and say, "Oh, if God was real, why would he allow this to happen?" They praise God. They say, "I'm so happy that my daughter or my son did not renounce Christ. I'm so happy." Why? Because he was brave, because he had trust, because he had love. And to have love is to have God. To be one with God is to be one with love, for God is love, and in love there is no fear. So these people are fearless because they have love, because they have God, because their soul is one with God. Isn't that so much different from the superficial perspectives, the superficial attachments, the superficial idols that we have so clung to in modern society, that leads us to be afraid of death, that leads us to be attached to materialism, to be slaves to the bondage of carnality? Why? Because we do not bow down to God, we bow down to the altar of mammon. Our souls are one with mammon, therefore our souls are imprisoned in the flesh. So I ask you, break the fetters of mammon. Tear down and pull down and shatter the idols of mammon and be in union with the divine love. This is Theodore Shoebat. I hope you guys have enjoyed this message and hope you guys have learned something from this message. You just heard some theology. God bless and God be with us.